So peace and light. This is Soli, your host from Alkalize to Realize talk show. And once again, we're talking to Santos bonacci. Today we will discuss twin flames and sacred sex. So can you take us off, Santos bonacci?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Soli, for having me again.
Mm-hmm.
Today's subject is quite an important subject. Many people are not aware of either sacred sex nor twin flames. So, firstly, I'll explain the difference. What both of those are. Sacred sex is a special kind of sex whereby fluids are not exchanged, seminal fluids, etc. They are retained during sex and they are reused. They are sublimated. And I speak a lot about this in many of my presentations. So I'll be speaking about this today as well. And twin flames or twin souls. Twin souls are different to soulmates. You may be married or have a partner who is your twin soul, your soulmate, but may not be your twin soul. So the soul group is collective, which you belong to, whereas the twin flame is your twin, literally, your soul twin. The ancients knew that our souls, the souls we have in us, are half of one original soul. And Jupiter is actually the power in the universe who boasts that he does this. I've read in a couple of ancient texts where Jupiter makes this boast, and he says, I am the one who splits the soul in two, so that forever the twins may be looking for each other to reunite. Now, this is why I have two subjects in today's discussion, because the sacred sex that is practiced between the twin souls is the kind of sex of ascension, meaning that it is alchemical on the positive side, and it raises the Christ consciousness within. So from the start, I'm here to say that sex is a divine and wonderful gift from the Creator, and it is the energy of the universe. It's not to be suppressed. It's not to be, I guess, shunned in any way as they do in churches. And it is to be explored and expressed. Each individual must express their sexuality. And there are two kinds of sex. There's the secular, which is the left-hand path. And here is practiced the wrong kind of sex, which descends the individual. Whereas sacred sex is the right-hand path, and what is right is right. So the idea is to transmute our sexual behavior and transmute it from lust to love, from vice to virtue. And I'm going to explain a little bit how to do that and then speak about twin flames. Sacred sex is practiced between two people who love each other. And the idea is to internalize the orgasm and the pleasure rather than having secretions. You see, the ejaculation orgasm depletes one of vital substances, force, energy, and consciousness. You see, the sperm is called the chrism. And chrism is another word for Christ, but it also gives the word charisma. And so when you lose your chrism, when you squander it like the prodigal son, you are losing your charisma, your enthusiasm, your zeal and zest and passion for life. And what you do then is you're practicing sexual behavior, which is spiraling you downward in a cycle, in a loop of vicious addictions, sexual addictions, where the individual needs to practice more and more depraved, lustful encounters and promiscuity in order to satisfy oneself. And there's no escaping this loop. The only way to escape the loop is not by abstinence, as some people do, but by transmuting the sex. So that you will find, and I've taught this to a lot of young men, how to practice this. And you will find that once this is practiced correctly, you restore the energy, you restore the chrism, you build it up, and your consciousness is restored. And the state of sleep, which one is suffering, is no longer there. So, once the individual has made a decision that they want to ascend and use sex as an alchemical process by which you can elevate your consciousness, they set about on the path to practice sacred sex or white tantra, as opposed to grey tantra and black tantra. Black tantra is where the individual always has an ejaculation orgasm. Grey tantra is where the individual occasionally has the orgasm and predominantly practices non-ejaculatory orgasm. So what we find is that the reason why a lot of lustful sex is practiced is because of the programming in the world. You see on MTV how young performers do very, very sexually explicit moves in order to induce a state of sexual desire in the young people who are watching. Now, this causes them to feel that sex is exciting, which it is, and that they would like to indulge, which they should. But what they don't tell you is the greatest secret of all, which is that you can practice as much sex as you like, as long as you do not release the fluids and learn how to be continent and competent and be in control of not only your mind when you're having sex, but also of your sexuality and its urges. And so rather than teaching children to control to the sexual desires so that they don't squander their energy and age exceedingly quickly, they are left on their own to explore sexuality and the kind which they think is normal and beneficial for them, whereas it's not. And the reasons being is that when you practice sacred sex, you honor your partner. And of course, when two people come together, there are three stages of sex. There is the stage when you are in the presence of the individual. And for some people, this is sex. And that's all the sex they have. They don't need touch and they don't need penetration, which is the two next kinds. They only need to be in silence near their partner, their twin, or their soulmate.
Yeah.
And they are generating this beautiful, warm sexual energy, and their orgasm is happening internally and spiritually, which is much more blissful and sustained than the fleeting 3-second, uncontained, uncontrolled physical ejaculation orgasm.
Yeah.
The next.
I was just gonna say, you know, a nice abbreviation for sex is sacred energy exchange, and I feel like that's what sex ultimately is at the end of the day.
It is, brother. It is sacred. And it's beautiful in all its three ways, whether it's the presence, you're in the presence of your loved one, or you are touching them, or penetration. All three have their purpose. So the second stage is touch. So the moment lovers touch, when they know they're about to engage in this sacred, wonderful experience, their auras, their energy fields come together as one. And this excites the partners, because when another magnetic field, a body, a soul, is nearby and you are touching it, you are receiving the energy and all the information, the ancestral information of that individual. That's why some people, when they're in the arms of someone, they don't feel that love flowing. And the reason being is because they might like that person physically, but there's something in their energy field from their ancestry and their previous past lovers, which is carried with you forever, or at least for the rest of this lifetime. And so they pull away, or the relationship doesn't progress because they're not matching in their energy fields, and it causes all kinds of arguments, stress, anger, etc. Then the third kind of sex is the most intimate, where penetration occurs, and this one is the deepest kind, and it is the most fulfilling on the physical plane. And usually it is so intimate that some fluids are exchanged. For instance, saliva. In sacred sex, there is no seminal exchange. But there is, of course, saliva, and saliva contains the whole spectrum of information from that individual. This is why kissing is so powerful, because instantly the saliva is taken into the body, and the body is now downloaded with all of the other individual's energy, information, hormones, ancestral DNA, blood, parasites, including the parasites of former lovers and all of their baggage. It is transferred through the saliva, and the one receiving it now is going to be influenced by that individual for the rest of their life, for good or for bad. And so this is why it's very, very important for people to be aware of the new program that's running in this world, which is polyamorous, where people find that it's okay and pleasurable to have flings and sexual encounters with strangers or people that they know and occasionally get together for sex. This is very, very dangerous because it can cause all kinds of psychosis with the intake of the new information into your temple, which is to be kept clean and sacred and pure. So in sacred sex, what happens is the two that are devoted to each other and practicing this sex, they are building a temple whereby they are being protected from demonic entities, parasites, etc., because they are only exchanging fluids between themselves. So when this happens, the temple is built upon purity, and the oils, the Christic oils inside of the subtle body are now raised, and the consciousness grows. And you'll see people who practice this kind of sex, you'll see them to be more stable mentally, more advanced spiritually, more conscious, more peaceful, less deterred and disturbed by events in the world, less agitated, because they're not running so many programs in the background, because the DNA has been downloaded and accepted. And so these individuals are much more clean and pure and can progress greatly in this lifetime so that they can make a great advancement. So I'll come back to this subject of sacred sex, but I want to jump into twin flames. And I want to read from a book called The Light of Egypt, Volume 1, The Science of the Soul and the Stars, by Thomas H. Burgoyne. And I've always promoted this book as the greatest book for expanding your consciousness and learning syncretism, including Volume 2 by Thomas H. Burgoyne. I have to plug these books because they are so valuable. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to also share two other books, which I believe every syncretist and every student on the path of knowledge to everlasting life should have. And these are my 4 favorite books. And these also are by the same author, George Carey and Inez Perez. This one is called Zodiac and the Salts of Salvation. And this one is called God-Man, the Word Made Flesh. Now, in this book, you will learn how important sacred sex is. And it shows how it's in the Bible to do this process, and it's called the marriage of the Lamb. The Lamb is Aries, the cerebrum. Aries is always on top. And so when you reach the Lamb of God, you marry. You are married in it. It's called the alchemical wedding in esoteric science. But in the Bible, it's called the marriage of the Lamb. And what happens is with sacred sex, you are always combining your 2 energy fields, pure, they intertwine, and they become one in consciousness. And this is the secret to ascending, as we will learn from Thomas H. Burgoyne. So what I'm going to do, I've got a bit to read. It'll probably take me about 5 minutes. And I'm sure you will enjoy this precious knowledge. You know what? I don't even think I need my reading glasses. Plenty of light. So on page 45, it says, the twin souls are related to each other primarily as brother and sister, and finally as man and wife. In this latter state, their true meeting place is the plane of embodied humanity. But during the present cycle, very few of these spiritual unions take place. But whenever the 2 halves of the same divine ego do meet, Love is the natural consequence, not the physical sensations produced by the animal magnetisms of their sexual natures, but the deep, silent emotions of the soul, the responsive vibrations of their internal natures toward each other, the blissful silence of two souls in perfect rapport, wherein neither careth to speak. This spirited love is the outcome of their divine relationship and should never be set aside nor crushed by any worldly considerations. But on the contrary, wherever possible, these pure intuitions of the soul should be obeyed. They cannot deceive nor lead astray, because the soul never makes a mistake when claiming its own. Should circumstances in life or any other material consideration prevent their rightful union, the fact that they have actually met will constitute an invisible connection, a spiritual rapport between them, which no earthly power nor device can break. And deep down within the secret chambers of the heart, the image of the loved one will be treasured up, and its continual presence will poison and corrode everything which pertains toward an ephemeral affection for another. So in other words, if anyone has an ephemeral, fleeting affection for another, it will be destroyed by the bond between the twins.
Mhm.
If a female should marry under these circumstances and become the mother of children, it will frequently transpire that the actual germs of spiritual life will be transmitted by this absent one. The external husband only provides the purely physical conditions for the manifestation of the spiritual offspring of the true Lord. The rejected soulmate, the spiritual bridegroom, is the real father, and very often the child born will resemble the image of its true parent. By far, the most important of the various relations of the sexes toward each other is that which pertains to their sexual intercourse. Untold misery, suffering, and crime are born into the world through the sensual depravity of mankind on the one hand, and their benighted ignorance of human nature upon the other. We are sorry that such a delicate subject cannot be properly treated in the present work. Therefore, we will only add that man and wife should harmonize both in physical temperament and in magnetic polarity. No marriage union should be thought of where these essential points of comparison are wanting. Neither wealth, fame, nor worldly position can compensate for the lack of these. Discordant unions are the harbingers of sorrow, crime, and disease. Sexual union between inharmonious souls evolves the seeds of every species of wickedness and sexual disorder. It may not become apparent to the producer thereof, but it exists within the spaces of human life, ready to spring into concrete form under the first favourable conditions. The purely martial man will prove a continual curse to the cold-natured Saturnine woman, and vice versa. This may not be the fault of the man or woman, but it is the discordant polarities of their astral constitutions. The same will hold good between natures of earthly triplicity and those born under the airy. I'll stop there because I've exhausted all the points that I want to share. So it shows how the twin flames are producing a relationship and sex which will ascend them and grow them and perfect them. Whereas the left-hand path, anything goes, where promiscuity is practiced, this causes depravity, disease, and all kinds of degeneration. So I'd just like to read an excerpt from a book here called The Perfect Matrimony, which is what this is called. The perfect matrimony is the matrimony where no spilling of the seed occurs and only pure sacred sex is practiced.
Yes.
And this is from the book The Perfect Matrimony by Samuel Aumweor, and it says, "It is not necessary to spill the semen to engender a child. Imbeciles like to spill the semen. The Gnostic is not an imbecile. When the couples are sexually united, clairvoyants usually see a very brilliant light which envelops the pair. In this instant precisely, the creative forces of nature come to serve as a means for the creation of a new being. When the couple allow themselves to be carried away by carnal passions and then commit the crime of spilling the seed, those luminous forces withdraw. Their place is taken by luciferic forces of a blood red colour, bringing quarrels, jealousy, adultery, tears, and desperation to the home. This is how homes which could have been a heaven on earth become true infernos. Whoever does not spill the semen retains, accumulates for himself peace, abundance, wisdom, happiness, and love. With the key of sexual magic, one can put an end to disputes in the home. This is the key to true happiness. During the act of sexual magic, couples are charged with magnetism. They magnetize each other. The pelvis of the woman pours out feminine currents, while the breasts give off masculine ones. In the man, the feminine current is rooted in the mouth and the masculine in his virile member. All these organs should be well excited by means of sexual magic in order to give and receive, transmit and collect vital magnetic forces, which continue increasing extraordinarily in quantity and quality. In the homes of Gnostic initiates, where between the couple there is such intimate sexual contact, delightful dance, joyful music, and ardent kiss have the object of achieving of the mutual magnetization of man and woman. The magnetic power is masculine and feminine at the same time. The man needs the currents of his wife if he really wants to progress, and inevitably, she needs those of her husband to achieve the development of her powers. When the couples magnetize each other, things progress and happiness makes its nest in the home. When a man and woman unite, something is created. Scientific chastity permits the transmutation of the sexual secretions into light and fire. Every religion which degenerates preaches celibacy. Even every religion at its birth and in its glorious splendor preaches the path of the perfect matrimony. So what it's saying there is that all religions begin with the perfect matrimony, and when they degenerate, they withdraw from this teaching. And it's funny because young men were sent to a seminary if they were religious and spiritual and wanted to advance in the path. And what is a seminary if not an institution or a school where semen retention is learnt and explored, not the spreading or the wasting of the semen. Now, the ancient religion of Zoroaster considered the wasting of the seed in such a way. In the Zendavesta, anyway, the holy book of the Zoroastrians, it says, if a man voluntarily admits his seed in a wet dream, what is the penalty that he shall pay? Ahura Mazda answered, 800 stripes with the Aspina Astra, 800 stripes with the Sarashakarana. Zoroaster replies, if a man voluntarily emits his seed in masturbation and in sex, what is the penalty for it? Ahura Mazda answered, for that deed there is nothing you can pay, nothing that can atone, nothing that can cleanse from it. It is a trespass for which there is no atonement forever and ever. So all of these, as you can see, are quotes and references from holy books. It's not my opinion. I had to learn this. I had to learn this after years and years of practicing the wrong kind of sex, the left-hand path, and seeing the harm that it has caused me. And so once you make this decision to stay on the path of pure sex, the benefits just multiply. And what you begin to see is how this world is programming us to abandon the pure way. And you'll see that women, for instance, are targeted more than men to divide families and to leave their loving partners. Maybe their partners are angry. Maybe they don't have money. Maybe they are struggling. And so in these situations, the women are encouraged to get a better life. Move on. It's not going to get any better. And and friends, even so-called friends, who may actually be hiding an underlying jealousy for the individual because they're more beautiful or more lucky to have a beautiful relationship than they are. And so they will get in their ear and tell them, oh, it's not going to work, move on, you're young, you're happy, make a better life for yourself and go and explore and experiment. That's what life is for, And it's made easy for the woman. And you see, any argument that they have, they call domestic violence and then go away from the one who truly loved them. And so how they do this is by, in many ways, on the physical plane, by physical things such as vaccinations, pharmaceuticals. For instance, antidepressants. A lot of people are on antidepressants. Well, it's known that these antidepressants actually go in and tweak the DNA of the individual. And behind that tweaking comes the new program. And that program could be bisexuality, fluid gender, polyamorous spirit, argumentative spirit, arrogant spirit. And what happens is all these different, like Xanax and Prozac and all of these medications are designed to override the natural, healthy, and sacred energy that we have in DNA, and to run a program over it so that now it's in you and you think it's your reasoning. And you'll find that when people start to walk away from the path, you will hear it in their reasoning. You'll hear it's them talking like they're running some kind of a program they've been got at, either through those medications or through various means of mind control, etc. But everyone is targeted and for the same purpose. And what you'll hear them say, for instance, is, things like nobody owns me and I want to be independent. Well, those are cover words for the individual justifying and validating that they don't want to commit themselves to the correct way.
Yeah.
Yep. And
So,
they want,
so
go
you,
on.
you just said that everyone is being targeted. So, who's doing the targeting?
Entities that have power and influence and who educate. Think about safe schools. In Australia, they want to establish safe schools where teachers can teach little children in kindergarten how to use dildos, how to be promiscuous, how to masturbate and fondle boys, girls, whomever comes. You know, it's free love. It's beautiful how to express this. You see,
Yeah.
that's one example, and how dangerous it is to target the young child's mind with this kind of propaganda. And then on TV, there's more of an onslaught. Promiscuous music videos where anything goes, and kissing here and kissing there and exchanging DNA and complicating the life of the individual with new DNA information coming in, with all the bacteria, parasites, demons, entities, blood. See, it's promoted to have ejaculations and oral sex where the fluids are taken into the body orally. Well, this is what you're doing. This is like cannibalism, because the sperm is the flesh. It's actually, you are eating eggs, and that is not vegan. You are eating parasites. There are many, many parasites, all kinds of parasites in the sperm. There is DNA and there is blood. So it's a blood addiction. And so by practicing this kind of sex, one is becoming a vampire, a cannibal, eating the flesh of the other individual. And that now becomes a part of them. Have you ever seen when someone finds a new partner and all of a sudden they love everything that the new partner does, even if it's against their principles? For instance, drinking. You know, they will accept a partner's drinking even though they absolutely detest drinking.
Mhm.
Or they might be flesh eaters and they're vegan, but they excuse that because how it happens is, with the first kiss, they get involved too quickly, they get close, they want hugs and kisses, they kiss and exchange saliva. The moment that occurs is the moment that now they are one flesh, and they will think in the same way. You often see, you know, for instance, some guys witness their sisters meeting a new guy, and they're pure sisters with all their virtues, etc. All of a sudden, within days of being with this new guy, they change and they start getting agitated with their family, whereas before they were peaceful. And they start being nervous and acting differently and defending their new partners.
Mhm.
And then eventually their new partners perhaps beat them up and they keep it silent, but you can see that they're suffering. And they will still defend those partners. You know, they'll protect them. Because why? Because the partner gave them their program through the DNA in the saliva. And that's the power that people have over other people. Through the sexual union, you now have power over the individual for the
Mhm.
rest of their lives. And depending on how much work the individual does to release themselves of their ex-partner's baggage depends on how well they will fare in the future and how well they will recover and restore their souls. Because what happens is, with each new partner, you're getting more and more complex information and diluting your own soul and losing your own soul. This is why prostitutes and pimps and all of these loose people, polyamorous and promiscuous people, they all look dirty. They look unclean. They have an energy of uncleanness because they've collected all this information from criminals, which they have in their saliva now, degenerate people, addictions. So if your partner has an alcoholic addiction and you kiss them, now you are inclined to be alcoholic and you'll start drinking because you're going to court. You're going to be courting. Doesn't mean you'll fully become an alcoholic, but you're going to be courting it, around the skirts. You're going to sort of introduce it slowly into your life. And eventually, if you don't have the moral fiber and the strength and the metal to resist that new degrading of your energy field, and you're not strong enough in your own aura, and you're not integrated enough in your own soul, it will wear away at your soul. And slowly but surely, other addictions will creep in. For instance, addictions to, find out where your partner was for 2 hours. Where were you? And who are you texting? Who is that girl that you're texting, etc.? All these fears are born from having previous partners who were unfaithful in your DNA, and you bring them into your new relationships. So by doing the right sex, you are protecting yourself. You see, the woman who says, I don't want to be owned by any man, she is announcing and signaling that she has a program whereby she doesn't want to be protected by pure love. She wants to be loose. Because you see, when a man owns a woman, he puts a ring on her finger. And when a woman owns a man, she puts a ring on his finger. And when they go out, they are protected by that ring. When they drink, they show their ring so that all the other prospective predators wishing to take them home and experience their aura field and inject themselves with their DNA because they're sexy, they will see the ring, and the entities will see the ring, and no one will be able to destroy what that individual has, nor their soul. And it is a protection on the finger. And this is why women take off their rings when they go out to bars and what have you, and they speak like this, and so that men are looking to see, oh yeah, no, she doesn't have a ring. Great, she's available. And this is a loose woman, unprotected, because she's not owned, and she doesn't wish to own a perfect matrimony and ascend. So when they are saying, I don't want to be owned, they are saying, I do not want to ascend. I want to take a break from ascension, and I want to see what is out there in the world, if it has anything for me. And all it has is empty experiences. Because when you're not making love with your twin flame, you are sacrificing a lot of energy in the wrong places. And you are dividing your soul further. And so more difficult it will be to make the ascension process. You see, not only men suffer when they ejaculate, so do the women who induce and encourage their men to ejaculate, because they think, well, for instance, they're told that it's very healthy to swallow a man's emission because it's got protein and minerals, etc., etc. Whilst that might be true, just as it is temporarily beneficial to eat animals, for instance, in the long run, it brings harm. And it brings harm to the woman because she is practicing sex of death and encouraging her partner to commit deathly practices and to kill and add to their dying. And so in doing so, they are both equally culpable. And so the woman also needs to be holy and to be whole, and not to make exceptions and due to weaknesses and desires and passions and any kind of excuse for the wrong kind of sex. They should always be apart and encourage their partners not to squander their energy and not to die and not to give it to them, because when they are doing this, you see, if the person is angry and traumatized and has entities attached to them, they are immediately taken into the body directly in the full spectrum. And instantly their energy has been degraded and they are hurting themselves. And so this is why it's very important in the days we live in, because we live in a day of Sodom and Gomorrah, where promiscuity is the norm and where people feel that it's their right and their choice and their independence is important to them, because then they can make choices about, well, like that guy, I'll take him home, grab his DNA and get a reprogramming for the rest of my life. Oh, I'll grab that girl over there. She is hot. I can't miss out on this one. Take her home. And of course, with the ejaculatory sex, we have all of these redundant and superfluous industries: contraceptive industry, abortion industry, what else do you have? There's more. I just can't think right now. But a woman who is with a competent man, she never has to fear that she'll get a venereal disease. She never has to fear that she'll receive entities from a hateful man, because she knows the man loves her and is loyal to her, and vice versa. And she never has to fear that she's going to get pregnant and she doesn't want to, she's not ready to have a child. And she doesn't have to go through all of this. Sex can be natural and it can be free and it can be expressed in its fullness once the individuals are in control. When you learn how to control the orgasm and implode it and breathe it up the spine and control it so that it slowly goes up to the head, and you sustain the orgasm so that it is sustained and so that you never, ever have to deplete your energy and start again, as it were, to rebuild your temple, because the moment you do the wrong sex, you destroy all the good work that you've done. And then you start to feel shame and guilt, and something is wrong, you know, and you're always wondering what it is. But you'll tell yourself, oh no, I shouldn't be ashamed, I shouldn't be guilty. And true, you shouldn't. You pick yourself up and you start again. But why would you keep jumping in the mud when you clean all your clothes and you're nice and clean and fresh? Why would you then go back, jump in the mud and dirty them again? You only have to wash them again. You see, you keep your robes clean. As it says in the Bible, Jesus in Revelation says, buy gold from me so you can be saved. Buy white robes, white linen robes for yourselves so you can cover your bodies, your nakedness and your shamefulness. Buy salve for your eyes so your eyes will open and see. And so the theme of buying white clothes and keeping them clean is very, very scriptural. And how that happens is through sacred practices. And the philosophers taught these in their seminaries, not to squander the semen in the seminaries, but how to retain it, seminal retention. So you want to jump in with a question there? I think I've...
Yeah, I was gonna ask, so when you speak of ejaculation, does this come from like our animalistic natures? Because I am aware. Well, I don't even know if the caveman ages happened or not, because there's so many things he told us about history that might not be believable. But I was gonna state that back in the days, it would have been great if you were it was technically good for someone to spread their seeds, because that meant that that would mean that they have reproduced with more women, and now their offsprings are to be great or whatever, if you get what I'm saying. And then also it's like, is it our conscious mind that separates us from not just wasting the sexual energy? Because I'm aware that animals, they're more different as their approach to sexuality, and they don't really practice semen retention. So I was just talking about how does this wanting of retention come from our consciousness? Because if we're talking about like animalistic natures, and animals, they don't particularly practice reserving their semen and etc. So with that being said, I feel like I can go on to say that nowadays you can see an animal or something in nature and it being more conscious than we human beings as to our behaviors and etc. But they don't particularly practice semen retention. So yeah,
Well, animals, the purpose of animals is quite different to humans. They're not ascending. They don't have this purpose embedded in their DNA. They don't have the memory of returning back to cause, because they were created on this plane. They stay on this plane. And their purpose is to reproduce, right? So they have to, because they only have sex and mate to reproduce. They don't have sex, most animals, just for recreation and pleasure. It is in the human domain to enjoy sex in an alchemical way so as to improve their being. And so humans have many ways to ascend. Some people don't have sex. They use meditation to feel the bliss, the internal bliss of the orgasm, which is our true nature, constantly. All they do is they go into meditation for half an hour every day, and they arrive at this beautiful place where they don't need any sex. It's all sex in the mind. And it always will be sex. Even when you get to Krishna and Radharani, you will find them making love. The Godhead is always making love. It is never apart from each other. They're always seeking each other, like the yin and yang. Radha is always playing games with Krishna, and Krishna is always cheekily trying to find where he can come upon her so he can give her attention that she wants and needs. And they're always playing, you see. So this play, the way the twins have been split from one soul, it will always be that way. It doesn't mean that you're a half a soul and you're not complete. No, you complete your half souls, and when you come together, you bring two complete halves that have done all their work, they match each other, they meet in the timeline continuum, and they work together to ascend together. Now, Thomas H. Burgoyne in his book says that if you do not meet your twin in this plane, you will meet them at the fourth chakra above your head, which is the middle of the next octave, the middle chakra, which is the spiritual heart chakra of each individual. There is the last port of call where you will absolutely meet your twin. And that's only for those where they don't meet on this plane. And so I guess it's in the hands of the universe to enable these meetings between twin souls, twin flames. And it's all destined. It's all written in the stars. It's a program. And everybody, as they go around in cycles of necessity reincarnating and longing for their lost half soul to reunite again, as long as they keep that focus, that goal in mind of restoring their love, they will find that. If they abandon that path and get distracted by riches, glory, fame, success, and all of those things, then they will squander many opportunities to return.
Yeah. So earlier you were just so wait, my question would be, so would you say everyone only has one twin flame?
Yes, you only have one twin flame, but you can have many soulmates. The twin flame is yours and only yours. And when you recognize them and you claim them,
Mm-hmm.
your soul can never make a mistake. It's not, you don't guess and you think, well, I wonder whether they were my twin, because we looked similar and we had a lot of similar interests. You don't ask those questions.
Mm-hmm.
Those questions don't even enter. You just have a direct knowing.
Yeah, exactly. And so earlier you were saying that Jupiter takes responsibility for splitting the souls, but I feel like astrologically speaking, that sounds more of like a Saturn thing more than a Jupiterian thing.
Yep, absolutely. Saturn is the one who enables the soul to come into time,
Mm-hmm.
whereas Jupiter is the one who is the causer of the soul to manifest in a split manner on the earthly plane.
That's interesting.
Yep.
So also I was gonna say, earlier you were talking about Tantra, and I just wanted to ask if you can tell us exactly what that word means.
Okay, Tantra is a form of worship, devotion. It's a practice, it's a way of life. And it's not only sexual. Tantra also applies to the controlling of every aspect of human behavior. Eating, tantric eating is eating whereby there is no gluttony, there is no lust, no animals have to die and be exploited for our stomach's passions, no cruelty. This is tantric, and there's control whereby the individual does not overeat and eat the wrong things, and doesn't subscribe to the diets of this world, which I call the yum yum diet. I see a lot of people, they choose to eat things that they know are bad for them. When you go down to the shops and you see obese people and they're eating hot dogs or cakes, I'm sure most of them or some of them know that those things are what they call, bad food, junk food, naughty food. Oh, you shouldn't have that. And yet they repeatedly do that. You see them eating ice cream and then just gorging ice cream down. All of this food runs programs in the individual because they are genetically modified. You know, the ice creams and everything, they have chemicals in them. And those chemicals, what they do is they dilute the integrity of the individual's DNA and the DNA reproduction. And people slowly start to degenerate. Many times you see people with great motives, very inspired and very motivated in life. And then you see them 10 years later in the gutter, hopeless and desperate and crying in a miserable condition. And you go, how did that happen? Such a luminary. Where did they lose their way? You know, and how? Well, this is because they've been targeted. And a lot of these people they're not to blame. Obese people, for instance, some of them, they don't even eat a lot, but they can't lose their weight. It's because what they ate reprogrammed their DNA so that the codons, the 64 codons are all confused and they don't reproduce in the order that they're supposed to. And so what happens is some foods make people obese, some make people anorexic, others get depressed, others get suicidal, others get confused, others all of a sudden, oh, I'm gay. I better leave my wife of 30 years and 3 kids, and I've got this new male lover and I'm so happy. Okay, well, all of this is part of the corruption. These people are not happy. They get excited when they've got a new life, when they've let down their guard and they make new rules for themselves. I want to be independent. It's excitement that is calling them and seducing them. It's very powerful because we all want the things that we are excited for. You see, you can't be tempted by anything that is not in you. You are the one that tempts yourself. If you want to have promiscuous sex, that's because it's in you. The question is, how did it get in you? Were you not pure at one stage? Maybe you weren't. Didn't you have pure ideals and the correct focus and you practiced the good way and then all of a sudden you abandoned that for a different way? Like the dog that returns to his vomit, or like the wife of Lot who turns around to look at Sodom and Gomorrah burning and feeling sorry for it and longing for all the things that Sodom and Gomorrah had for her. And she turned into a pillar of salt. You see, in the scriptures it says, the man who puts his hand to the plow and looks behind is not worthy of the plow. Because when you're plowing, you look straight ahead. Because otherwise the furrows, they're going to be all over the place if you look behind. You won't see your target and go straight.
Yeah, okay. So, earlier when you were talking about targeted individuals and obesity and anorexia, I was gonna say, aren't earth signs more prone to obesity, and then when it comes to like fire and air, they're more prone to be anorexic, but there's other elements that are incorporated too, of course, throughout the chart, but mainly, wouldn't you say that to be?
Yes, that's a good analogy there, a good description. Air signs can be very thin, like your Geminis usually. Fire signs as well, like myself, Aries, generally run pretty thin. There are always exceptions though, because why? Well, because the chart is not just about the sun sign. There's the moon, there's the ascendant, there's the angles, the MC, IC, DC, and AC. These points in the chart exert a lot of influence on the body. And so you might have, you might be of the air sign and show a lot of earth in you, because when you check the whole chart, there is a lot of earth there, and that will come through. So there's a lot more to astrology than just the simple things. And, as a good doctor, does not make any diagnosis based on one symptom.
Mm-hmm.
He considers all the symptoms before he prescribes some medication or whatever have you. Otherwise, he'll be hit and miss and firing in the air, and he won't have his practice for too long. So the same is with astrology. And so when certain things in the chart lead or contribute to the individual having vices or lusts or needs, they can see that and they can improve that, transmute it, and make something of that. Because let's face it, while we are in our human vessel, we will always be tempted. There will always be lustful situations, desires, passions, greed, always lingering around us in our lives. And we will fall for them if we're not protected. And we need the protection of ownership of our partners. And so we can say, yes, I'm with someone. And just by saying that and being proud of that,
Mm-hmm.
you are protecting yourself, because the entities will not enter, because you have made a pact with purity, and the angels will protect that. They will guard your soul. Remember, in the scripture it says, do not fear those who can kill the body, but fear the one that can destroy the soul. And that's you. You can destroy your soul just by bad sex practices and by diluting your own soul, by introducing other people's DNA without even knowing them and what's behind that facade that they put, that very friendly facade when they want something from you. Oh, they're nice, they make you feel good, but they're seducing you. They don't care for you. They just want your energy. And even just a touch, they're stealing your energy. Then the kiss, instantly they are downloading their energy into you, and now they have control, partial control of your decisions, your desires, wants, needs, your ideals change. Everything changes, and it's a big fight to retrieve all your original data. It's like a virus on the computer. You have to now run a program to scan the disk and get rid of all the Trojan horses coming in to enable a process of self-destruction in the individual, so that your soul will be so diminished in its power that it will not ascend. And when you die, you won't have the force of soul to elevate yourself to the next plane. And you will gravitate to this plane, and you'll be sucked down by the entities. And the things you practice at the moment of death are the things you will return to practice. So if you're practicing tantric sex and you have built a beautiful white pure temple of protection around you, then that temple will always be there protecting your soul in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Now that this is what I was wondering. So I know that in astrology, Venus is like the planet of love, but it's more like lustful love, kind of selfish love, wanting, kind of to satisfy your desires in a sense, I guess you can say, when you compare it to Neptune, which is more of like the higher octave of love. The higher octave of Venus is Neptune, and this is more of, like selfless love, loving someone with all of, just loving someone just to love them without any expectations or but it also might be a relationship based upon illusions in a sense too when you're dealing with Neptune. And you kind of look at someone, but you're kind of projecting onto them things that you would like, but I guess what I'm kind of asking is, when it comes to sacred sex or tantra, are you like utilizing both Neptune and Venus, or is it like one over the other, or are they both working harmoniously to achieve this tantra?
Well, Venus is about love, principled love,
Mm-hmm.
and Neptune is about transcendental love. So both of those archetypes and others, such as Mars, virility, enthusiasm, passion. See, Venus is about pleasure and leisure. They're both the same word. You just put a P in front of the one. So pleasure is part of the human experience. We need pleasure, but are we pleasing our senses of the body or the senses of the soul? Because as you have 5 senses or 7 senses, sight, touch, taste, these are all have their equivalence in the higher octave, which is the senses of the spirit. So some people, when they have sex, they satisfy those senses. They don't indulge in sense gratification merely on the plane of earth. Yes, there will be sense gratification, but it's not the focus. It's the base. It's the most fundamental part of it, and it should only be expressed in a controlled manner, where the man knows that he is in control of the dragon, as Saint Michael and Saint George slew the dragon, and he knows that he's not going to defile his partner and make her a prostitute. He is now reverting her to virgin. So once a virgin has strayed from the path, once they've experienced the true sex, whether it be male or female, they now have, according to Samael Aumweor, it will take them a year of proper sexual practice to be restored and to cleanse the temple and to eliminate all entities and to have a protected soul from any kind of corrosion. And it will take a year for them to return to the virgin, to a virgin state. So it's not all lost. And I'm not here to do anything other than encourage people to consider this way of living, even if it doesn't resonate with them. Consider it. Think about it, because you might find that this path is more appealing. No woman respects an ejaculator. They might say, "Oh, I love you, dear," and have a measure of respect, but it will never be complete respect, because that man is satisfying himself, and he satisfies himself with a fleeting experience rather than an everlasting experience. When you learn how to control the orgasm and implode it, it stays in you. It's not released. That magnetism stays in you, and you build up your charisma by keeping your charism. And you see, that's why you see people who ejaculate, they look dull under the eyes, they look grey. There's an energy of lifelessness, and as though their soul has abandoned their body. There's no one home. They might be intelligent and intellectual, and they might be very clever, etc., but there's a disconnect. You can see that there's no godliness in them, and you can see that they are godless and lost and looking for their soul, which they've lost, simply because they've allowed their field to be diluted and degraded.
Yeah, that's interesting. So one of the ways to dilute the soul is through um like giving it too much information technically through, well, through sex and etc. So my question would be, so if that's the case, then is that what the soul is? Kind of like a collection of information, because I am aware that our soul thrives experience and expansion through experience, So I guess that would be my question. Would the soul kind of be considered like a collection of information?
Yeah, yeah. The soul is the breath. Breath and soul are the same word. And the blood. Adam means soul, and red, red blood. So the passions are in the blood and the inspiration is in the breath. And so when you talk to someone up close, they are breathing in your space, and you are taking in some of those particles of their breath. This is why I'm very careful to keep my space when I'm talking to other people, especially people I don't really trust or like, or there's something just wrong with their aura field. I keep away. And when I shake their hand, I make sure that after that, I wash my hand. I wash my hand of their energy. So even just the breath, even by standing next to them. In the Greek system, they say, when you stand next to a great mind, you will become great, because part of their consciousness will be downloaded onto you. When you stand next to a fool and a degenerate, you get downgraded and you will not escape this. It's about magnetic exchange, magnetic fields, how they exchange their... You see, that's what an atom is. An atom gets upgraded or downgraded, or it goes fusion or fission, becomes another element just by adding a particle, an electron. Well, there are no particles. What's happening is how does an atom of carbon become an atom of nitrogen from 6 to 7, and then oxygen to 8? How does it go up and down? Well, because when they come together, they call it ionic bonding, where one atom loses an electron, it jumps into the other one and modifies it and makes a different isotope. Well, there's no particles. What happens is when they come close together, two atoms, one atom exerts influence on the other atom, and its torus field releases and gives some of its energy to the other atom. They change each other's frequency. Okay, so this is how elements change. The frequency of their vibration changes. Not that they exchange particles which don't exist. So that's the same with two atoms of human beings. A human being is an anatomy. Well, that's a body of atoms. So when you have a body of atoms coming together, what's happening is if the good person is mixing with a bad person who has a lot of karma, they are downgraded, and the other person is benefited, and they get what they wanted, which is to steal the energy of the beautiful person that they had an encounter with. And those encounters, they're very, very, very costly.
Yeah. So now do you think you can incorporate, I guess I can say lustful sex to vampires and kind of vampire energies and kind of how those two relate?
It is vampire energy, because especially when a semen is exchanged and shared, as I said, those are cells. That is substance coming from the man. It's his body. It's flesh. You are cannibal. You are a parasite. You are now a vampire, because there's blood particles in there as well. So you're having a dose of blood. This is why women think that it energizes them and gives them, makes them more sexualized, from the first kiss and the exchange of saliva and magnetic energy, they are stimulated already, and it's almost hard to stop. And then they want more, you see? And so then they go for the semen. And then that gives them a greater turn on, because all of a sudden, all the energy from their male partner, it's in them. Whatever you ingest affects you. If you eat an apple, you get the consciousness of an apple. That's why they used to say, try to have mono meals. Try to have one apple and let it digest through, so that the consciousness of the apple benefits you. You see? If you have, imagine if you take a tab of LSD. It's only small. And yet how does it affect you? Makes you go on a massive trip.
Right.
See, that ingestion, just ingesting that chemical changes you temporarily and forever, because definitely when you take acid, you are improved if you do it well, and you will always be changed from that trip. You'll be upgraded. Same with a mushroom. Same with arsenic. Let's say you put a drop of arsenic in a glass of water and you drink the water, and only that little drop, imagine the effect it has on your body. It kills your body. So imagine just one drop of sperm, how much information, ancestral information, is in there. That individual may have had a grandfather who was a pedophile. That individual may have had a grandmother who was a black satanic witch, cursing people and causing them to be cursed. And you are now intaking that part of that person, whether they are criminals or killers or murderers or lustful or whatever. So this is why one must protect themselves and guard themselves against promiscuity.
Right. They say that the higher heads have a tendency to practice kind of cannibalism, and it's said that they're kind of, in a sense, feeding us ourselves without us even knowing. They say that like the fetuses that they collect, they have the tendency to kind of put them maybe in like beauty products or even just our food. And they say that when something is labeled, natural flavors, like a pineapple is a pineapple, like you don't particularly have to say it's naturally flavored, you just say pineapple flavored. But they say that when something is labeled naturally flavored, this might be an indication that they might have put something, that's of suspicion that might come from us in a sense. So I was gonna ask, why do you think they do that exactly? And then, I feel like us doing that is like spreading genes and then kind of
Yeah.
spreading chaos too, because I feel like a baby who's been left to die, through abortion or something, this causes trauma. And it's like, you know, sometimes trauma can start the day of and I forget what it is, but when like the sperm meets the egg, like depending on how, the love making was, the situation, everything, trauma could start then and there. But I also think it's interesting because it said that the woman's wound and like her system, it kind of rejects the sperm and it treats it as like an invader. So then is life not natural or like meant to be, like
Well, this is a good point, because Samael Aumweor in The Perfect Matrimony explains that you don't have to release one egg to to induce pregnancy. Sperm does not have to be released to procreate. You see, you ask the question, why do they put all, aborted, traumatized baby fetus
Yeah.
in all of the products,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, it's in the chemtrails, blood plasma. It's in lots of these chocolates and drinks and food such as McDonald's. They are putting human DNA in there to cannibalize us, but not only to cannibalize us, so that we now run the program of the DNA which we've ingested. So when you eat a McDonald's hamburger and you're eating human flesh, and that was, say, an aborted baby, you are now ingesting that trauma, that fear, that torture that the infant or the fetus went through. Now that is in the chocolate you're eating, and all of a sudden, you keep eating the same chocolate or taking the same medication, and all of a sudden things change in your life, your perspective, your desires, your passions. All of a sudden, for instance, how do people become polyamorous? Well, they go to a festival, they take some drugs, and everyone's loose and kissing each other. I'm very careful when I kiss people. I don't kiss people. And then someone will be very, very sexual, and they'll come over and they'll, do a passionate kiss with you. And you're like, oh, that was nice. And that felt good. And from that moment onward, that individual's DNA and programming and demons are running in you. So what will happen now is you'll go home and you'll start getting agitated, and you'll think, wow, I want to go to another one of those festivals. I want to meet those people who are so loose and free with their sex and nice. And you don't see the trap anymore, because now their DNA, their promiscuous, polyamorous programming is in you. And either you fight it and pull back and away from this, or you run the program and you follow the leadings of the addiction. And then so you have another encounter, and you all of a sudden you're thinking like that person. You're thinking, oh, I want to have a threesome, because that person was that kind of person. And now all of a sudden your mind's thinking, oh, wow, well, that'd be exciting. And so you go out and you get yourself one of these experiences. You put yourself in the place where you can do it. And then after that, you feel, well, that was, enjoyable, but I feel empty. Maybe I need to do it again, and better and different. And more towards, more the way I want and envisage, because that wasn't exactly how I thought it would be. So let me try again. And now the individual is spiraling down a loop where their sense gratification needs to be validated, it needs to be experienced, it needs to be practiced, and it has to see its fulfillment. And unfortunately, for some people, they never come out of it. They never recover from the damage, and they stay degenerate. And the demons grow from all their ex-toxic partners, continue to grow in them, and they live out the desires of that new DNA in them, and they can't help it, because now it's a different program. It's like if I get an old Mac application or program on my computer, and then they send me a notification to upgrade to the new, Capitan or whatever it is, the new one, 10.1, now 10.2 is out. You are actually you're supposed to be upgrading with this download or upload. And so this is why a good woman will always choose the best partner for themselves. They will always choose the hero, the one who conquered them, not seduce them. You see, a good woman, if she's single and she goes out and meets someone, she doesn't take him home that night. She says, give me your number and I'll call you. And then they go out for coffee. And she gets another feel for the guy, you know, different circumstances, different setting, different scenario. Let's see how he acts. Let me throw in some questions and see how he answers. And you'll see whether the individual has the same morals, principles, ethics, and virtues as you. And then you'll go out for dinner, and you'll go out for a dance. And then when the woman is sure, or the man, then the intimacy begins, because they know that they've made a good choice and they won't hurt themselves with contamination from an inferior soul. And unfortunately, many beautiful women and many great men partner themselves with inferior partners just for the experience. And, they come out the worse for it. And this is called to be unequally yoked. You see, in the Bible it says, do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers, for your destiny is in the heavens and theirs is not. So if you're ploughing and you have a big bull next to a small calf and you put a yoke on them to pull the plough, the little calf is going to have to do a lot more work. The big bull is going to have to carry the whole weight of the plough, because this little calf next to him is not doing anything at all. He's too weak. It's an unequal yoke. So you have to pair the bulls at the same strength and size and industriousness. You can't have a lazy bull next to a very good, strong working bull. So, because you're going to have crooked furrows. You see, so you don't want to be unevenly yoked with unbelievers, even if it's just for an experience, because what they share with you remains with you possibly forever. And, I've often been in the situation where I could have had a fling. I've never had a one-night stand in my life because I don't have any seductive know-how. I don't know how to seduce women. I know how to conquer women in time. I want them to watch me, respect me, to see my actions, to listen to me, to hear me. And then the individual is more ready to be wholly with you because you have conquered them. You haven't seduced them, then the next morning they look at you in bed and go, oh no, I took this guy home, I'm out of here. How did he seduce me? But the problem is now, you've taken a part of their life with you. And many times one night stands end this way, where they wake up the next morning and think, what was I thinking? And it's too late. That's the moment where you need to go to a shaman or a healer and exercise those entities, do some rituals, do some chanting, do some hard work to get them out of you. Yeah. And some cleaning from the inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say that angels have halos and demons have horns, because the horns of a demon can be symbolic to, like, in a sense, kind of like the halo of the angel, but the horns just represent the fact that this demon has kind of broken the loop. So I guess it's ultimately, all about looping within, like energetically within, but demons have horns because I guess they were once angels, but they kind of broke that loop, you know what I mean? So I think, things of like ejaculation, but just in general, like breaking your loop energetically one way or another would be symbolic to, something that's demonic, I guess I can say. But also, I do want to ask you this. They say that demons are a product of us humans in our minds. So I was gonna ask you exactly what are demons to you?
Demons are entities, okay? So they are service to self entities who have made a decision to work on the dark side. And they are transcendental creatures in counter space. You don't see them, but they are a force to be reckoned with. And they have personality
Mm-hmm.
and they have a lot of power. But they only have power over you if you leave it open to them. So if you leave yourself unprotected, for instance, and you don't realize that we are in a spiritual war, as it says in Ephesians, it says that we are in a war not on the physical plane, but with spiritual entities and dark controllers of the dark forces of humanity. And they would be what's called demons. We are demons as well.
Mm-hmm.
Humans are demons. Demon just means an intelligent being.
That's interesting.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah,
they say that the root word for development is in the word devil. Devil and development. So I guess they say that demons, the difference between like a demon and an angel is like, in a sense, a demon kind of has the space for it to develop, whereas angels, they're kind of set in a program, which is like kind of to serve God. So I guess, there's
well,
that, like,
yeah, angels are ones who are loyal and faithful
mm-hmm,
to the process of ascension. That's all. Demons are the ones who seduce and keep us down on the earth. And they do that through thought waves and emotion waves. And so we're all susceptible to their influence. The difference is the one who protects himself will come out unscathed, and the one who willy-nilly, like the fool, just accepts all people into their energy field, whether sexually or friendly, doesn't matter. The moment you accept a new person into your life, you are now absorbing their consciousness. You are absorbing their influences, their nature, their way of thinking. And one needs to be very, very cautious, because if one knows that their way of doing things is superior and pure, they only stand to lose when they mix with other people, because their purity will be stolen from them, because the energy exchange is equal. When you kiss someone and you get all of their demons, you are giving them all your demons and all your parasites. And what are they going to do with that? See, when you split up, this is why when split ups happen, the women get angry. They don't want the partner to see their children. They go to court and get the children and custody, full custody. They get jealous of their new partners. They want more than 50% of the property, more than what's, rightfully theirs. And all of this bad trouble begins. And that's because the partners know that the other partner has got a part of them with them. And that's why they get jealous, men and women, when their woman is with another man or their man is with another woman. It's because they know that through the saliva and through sex and through their intimacy, that a part of them is with the other individual. It's a knowing,
mm-hmm,
and so they are feeling desecrated and betrayed, because now the partner is mixing their energy with another person, and now you're intertwined with that person inside of your ex-partner's soul. So the connections get very, very intertwined and complicated and complex. And this is why now in this day and age, people are confused. They've lost the way because they've had too many bad practices, unprotected, and they are damaged.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, sexual trauma is a real thing, from society, I guess, them exploiting sexuality. Yeah, just so many things. But I also think, we should save more conversation for later. But yeah, I feel like we've gone long enough, maybe 2 hours, who knows, who knows. But
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. I think we've exhausted the subject. There's not really much more to say. There is, but we can leave it for another time. I mean, you can always address this subject and branches of this subject because it affects everything.
Mm-hmm.
If your sex is pure and you are pure and you are upright
Mm-hmm.
and you stay on that path, your life will be blessed
Yeah.
forever. It will be blessed, and you will not be restless at night. You will not be nervous. You will not have herpes, gonorrhea, syphilis from loose people.
Mm-hmm.
And not only the diseases will you carry because it's in the sperm and in the saliva, but there's spiritual diseases as well. There's spiritual illnesses.
Exactly.
Their wanton lust for descending into lustful planes. That now imbues you, and now you have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'd like to.
So technically, it's like exchanging bodily fluids with another. It's kind of like once you do that, you kind of have now their parasites and diseases, but they might be dormant. Like they're inside you, but they might be dormant. Yeah, that's some crazy stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
If you don't deal with that energy exchange
Mm-hmm.
promptly and protect yourself, you don't know how uh, long it will be before some of their real demons kick in your life. For instance, if you're connected, if you had a fling with someone, you had sex with them a handful of times, and now you've broken off with them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you go off on your merry way and they go off and you don't see each other anymore. But that individual, 5 years down the track, gets cancer or leukemia or gets hit by a bus. Now, something of a similar nature visits you. And I've seen that many, many times where, an ex-partner has a disease or something, and then the person says, "Oh, I've got the same thing. I have got the same thing as him and he's going to die. And now I've got the same thing." Because that's how it works. It might take 5 years for their herpes to manifest, or a surprise. Who knows what now these days? There's not just herpes, gonorrhea, syphilis, and all of these. These days, there's a lot of immune deficient viruses and bacteria and superbugs that come from the saliva that really work their harm slowly in the background and eventually cause a very miserable life and death to the individuals.
Yeah, right. The interesting thing about the medical industry and the food industry, they're both connected. And the thing about it is the medical industry doesn't particularly work with the body, but it's more like the medicines they give us, they kind of degenerate our nervous system, I guess you can say. They kind of work against the nervous system and the food as well, so it's like to start off with our lifestyle is like degenerating our nervous system. So this does make us weak and susceptible to things of this nature. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why people are weak now, because they stand for nothing and fall for everything. People are falling. I've seen luminaries in syncretism, luminaries in veganism, luminaries in truth telling setting the setting the model as role models, and being great, inspirational people to other people. And I've seen them just drop their load and vacate their honourable position and just squander everything for a pot of red. As it says, as Esau and Jacob, the story where Jacob says, give me a pot of red. I don't give a hoot about my birthright. Give me, Esau, I'm hungry. Give me some stew now. Give me some red. And Esau said, okay, here's your meal. I am now the firstborn, and I have all the rights of the firstborn. And like the foolish virgins, the 5 foolish virgins, they had no oil in their receptacles.
Mm-hmm.
The oil is the chrism, you see, and they weren't foolish virgins. They were foolish prostitutes because they squandered their oils rather than restoring them and sublimating them in the wrong kind of sex. So the virgins who had oil in their lamps and oil
I don't know if it's my part or his.
Hey, are
Hi.
we still on?
Yeah, we're still on. I think it was. I don't know if it was mine or yours, but yeah, we just had a bad connection just there. But I think finish. We should wrap it up now. Like I think you should finish what you were saying.
Okay, so I'd like to finish with encouragement.
Uh-huh.
I have been practicing non-ejaculatory sex since the middle of 2012, and that I started that with my then Japanese wife and mastered it, and then I got divorced. And then I had a new partner, which I practiced that with as well, and have been 100% successful. No contraceptives, no fear of unwanted pregnancies, no fear of venereal disease, etc. Pure sex. And the reason I'm sharing this is not to boast, but to encourage people, young men especially, who get so taken by the ejaculation and think that they need it in order to be satisfied and in order to have proper sex, to encourage them to think again and try the pure path and realize that sex is blissful, not just pleasurable. There is bliss at the end of sex. And you can only enjoy that bliss when you practice sex correctly.
Yeah, exactly. And we all want that, bliss, because at the end of the day, that's what we are, just being, like we are human beings, not doings. So we are at the end of the day just bliss. But yeah, this has, been this has
Exactly.
been
And
so.
that's our true nature. The heart desires only 3 things:
Yeah,
consciousness, existence, and
exactly.
Satchitananda.
hmm Exactly. But yeah. Wait. I have another question. So would it be like, because they say that the serpent or the Kundalini energy, I think, I'm not certain, I'm not sure of this, but this is just something that came up to me, like that it starts life, kind of, it's responsible in the beginning, like it's kind of like the spark, I guess you can say. But what my question to you, it would be like, so throughout this journey, would it be like you practice tantra, and through the practice, your Kundalini energy awakens, or would it be like your Kundalini awakens and then you practice tantra? But also, what is Kundalini? If you can elaborate on that as well. Then we'll wrap it up.
Well, kun, we know another kun word, C-U-N-T, because at the bottom of the spine is where the serpent is coiled. And that's why you have words such as kunus, which is the Latin word for the feminine genitalia, kunus. And kundalini is awakened by stimulating the kunus. The woman is the generator. She's the gateway to this energy. And the male needs to be competent and continent in order to raise that Kundalini serpent correctly, not in lust and blasphemy, where you degrade the woman and spill your seed all over her in every which way possible. This is turning a woman into a prostitute and a whore. And so in order to elevate the woman, you keep her a virgin. You keep her clean and pure. And that's the protection. And she wears a ring and goes around telling people, I'm owned as I own my beautiful partner. And we have an ownership contract. It's not about owning the body. See, a lot of people get offended about this. They think, oh, you can't own someone. They're not yours. You don't own their property. You own their love and respect. And you own their commitment to you to help you get to heaven. That's what you own. You own each other's holiness and you protect it forever. And you guard it against any predators and seducers.
Yeah, okay.
And you become very jealous, not in a fleshly way. You become jealous of your relationship. That's why it's healthy for partners to not only guard their own steps and not to flirt with other people, but to remind their partners that they would not appreciate it if they did that. Because you don't want to degrade your relationship. You don't want to downgrade it and debase it and desecrate it. You want your partner to do their part, to be loyal to this beautiful thing that you've got, that no one can destroy and should. And so you keep your temple clean. I love it when my partner is protective of who, you know, I share my time with, because in the end, everyone I share my time with, I exchange energy with and bring it back home to her. And women are very, very intuitive, and they don't like that. They like to know, who have you been with? And what did you talk about? And why? Because they know that you will change accordingly to the people that you frequent. They want to know that you've been with a good person. Oh, you were with Tom. Oh, he's a good man. I'm glad you spent the afternoon with him. Oh, you were with Jenny? You mean the flirt? You didn't have a coffee with her, did you? Oh, no. Now they feel hurt and betrayed, because you can't hang out with Jenny without flirting or being flirted upon. And your good woman, she doesn't want you to be flirted upon. She doesn't want women doing that and spoiling your energy and polluting you and corrupting you. So that when Jesus said, if you so much as look at a woman with passion, you have already committed a sin. Cast out, rip your eye out. If your left eye is making you stumble, rip it out. In other words, take out the stumbling block in you, and not to be weak and put yourself in a position of temptation where you may fall. It's no use being a syncretist and living the pure life and then going to music festivals where ecstasy and loose polyamorous weirdos are hanging out, you know, and they want to have threesomes and foursomes and orgies. It's no use going there and say, oh no, I'm not like that, but I'm here, I want to be with these people. You can't escape that crowd and be untainted. You will go away with debilitating demons and entities, and they will work on you in the background and they will corrupt you. And eventually you'll be seduced and you'll go and have an experience, and then, oh, I liked it. I think I'll have another one. And then before you know it, you're addicted. And addictions are the curse of regeneration. You will always reincarnate and regenerate. The only way is to ascend. To ascend is to release yourself of addictions. And in sacred sex, you can have as much sex as you like and you'll never be addicted and you'll never be lustful. As long as you're with your partner and you practice non-ejaculatory sex, you can have sex all day long. You can fulfill all your fantasies and you will never, ever feel shame, guilt, disillusion, or not a sense of fulfillment. And that's the beauty of it, you see. You can invert sex. It's not about, oh, that guy over there, he's promiscuous, he's always having sex. Well, even the gods are always having sex. It's what kind of sex? That should be the question asked.
Yeah, there's truth to that, you know. But yeah, I think this should be the end. So, you know, this has been Solely Spirited. This has been Santos, Bonacci, and Solely Spirited discussing, you know, tantric, well, not tantric, but sacred sex and twin flames. We thank you for watching. Well, you know, you can find Santos Bonacci on YouTube at Mr. Astrology. You go ahead.
Mr. Astrotheology. One word, Mr. Astrotheology. And my website is universaltruthschool.com.
Yeah, and we could be found on YouTube at Alkali Sterilized Talk Show. That would be YouTube. And then on Facebook, you can find us on the Activation of the Philosopher's Stone. That would be our group. We thank you for watching. Peace and love.